Okay, pre-calc class, this is the second half to your review for the test on quadratics and complex numbers. We're on number 18. If you need 1 through 17, that can also be found on YouTube or on your Canvas. So on number 18, we are asked to solve the equation x plus 2 quantity squared equals 100. So we have to get rid of the square before we get rid of what's inside the parentheses. Remember, when we're solving an equation, it's PEMDAS backwards. So there's no inside the parentheses. That's what we're going to do last. So the only thing outside the parentheses is the square. So the opposite of square is square root. So you're going to square root the left, square root the right. The square root and the squares cancel. You're left with x plus 2 equals plus or minus 10. Okay? So then you're going to subtract 2 on both sides. So we're going to have x equals negative 2 plus or minus 10. So you're going to have two answers. One is going to be negative 2 plus 10, which is going to be 8. The other is going to be negative 2 minus 10, which would be negative 12. And so the answer is D, 8 and negative 12. Okay, number 18 says solve, and we have a p squared minus 4p equals 45. So you have a p squared and a p. So you can't just get p by itself. So you need to set the equation equal to 0. So the way we would do that is we move 45 to the left, so it'd be minus 45. So that would give us p squared minus 4p minus 45 equals 0. Now, if you're trying to decide, should I use the quadratic formula? Should I factor? Should I complete the square? Probably not complete the square because most of y'all don't like that. So look at your multiple choice answers. All of these are nice numbers. So that means you can factor this function. So I'm going to factor here. I'm going to set up my skeletons, p and a p. Multiply to get a negative. So one's positive and one's negative, and the difference needs to be 4, the multiply to give you 45. If you're struggling with your multiplication factors, look at your multiple choices. 10 times 18 is 180. 45 times 49 is huge. 9 and 5 are going to be your numbers. Now you got to really pay attention to your signs here. So in the factoring, the middle sign's negative, so the 9, the bigger number needs to be negative, and the smaller number needs to be positive. Check your work right here. 5 minus 9 is negative 4. 5 times negative 9 is negative 49. Now, again, be careful because that's the problem factored it wants you to solve. So when you bring it out of the parentheses, you have to change the signs to negative 5 and positive 9. So the answer is C. Okay, question number 20. What are the values of x in the quadratic equation? So you've got an x squared, you got a couple of x's, so you're going to have to either factor or use the quadratic formula. Notice again, all of your answers are nice numbers, so this problem could be factored, but you got to set it equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is minus 8x on the right, minus 8x on the left, minus 14, because I got to set it equal to 0. When I do that, I get x squared. 3x minus 8x is negative 5x. Negative 10 minus 14 is negative 24. Equals 0 because everything on the right canceled. So I'm going to do my skeletons here. And I got to multiply to get a negative. So one's positive, one's negative, and a difference of 5. So what multiplies to give you 24 and has a difference of 5? 3 and 8. 8 and 3. All right, my middle sign's negative, so the bigger number needs to be negative. So 8 goes here. 3 goes there. Check your work. 3 minus 8 is negative 5. 3 times negative 8 is, 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. Now this is where you got to be careful because when you bring it out of the parentheses, it changes signs. So x doesn't equal 3 and negative 8. X equals negative 3 and positive 8. So the answer would have been B. Okay, question number 21 says find the zeros of the function. Now, another word for zeros are x-intercepts or roots. So that means you're finding the x-intercept, the value of x, when y is 0. Okay? Now, I don't know if you noticed, but all the answers have a radical in them, so you can't factor this. You're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So 0 equals negative x squared, so a is going to be negative 1, b is going to be positive 3, and c is going to be 9. And you need to know the formula for the test. You got to have it memorized. X equals negative b plus or minus a square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And everywhere you have a variable, you're going to put parentheses. All right, and then you're going to fill in your ABCs. So negative b is 3. Plus or minus square root of b squared, b is 3. Minus 4 times a is negative 1. And c is 9. Should have done the opposite there. Hope y'all can read that. Actually, let me take that off. Negative 1 is a. C's that looks like not a negative 1. All right, and then all over 2 times a is negative 1. So we have the negative of 3 is negative 3. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Plus or minus the square root of, I'm going to type in all this in my calculator. So 3 squared minus 4, parentheses, negative 1, parentheses, 9. And I get 45. And 45 can be broken down. 9 times 5 gives you 45. Why did I pick 9 and 5? Because 9 is a perfect square. So this is x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 times 5 all over negative 2. 9 is a perfect square, 5 is not. So when you take the square root of 9, you have negative 3 plus or minus 3 square root of 5 over negative 2. Now here's the problem. A lot of students jump at this answer right here because they see negative 3 and they see a negative 3 here. But notice in this answer, 2 is positive. Our 2 is not. Our denominator needs to be positive, so we're going to divide everything by a negative 1. When you divide by a negative 1, negative 3 divided by negative 1 is positive 3. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 is 2, and plus or minus is still plus or minus. So the actual answer is positive 3 plus or minus 3 radical 5 over 2, which is B. This is normally one of the most missed questions on the test because people jump at this sign right here and don't look at the denominator. Okay, question 22 says, what are the x-intercepts of the equation? Again, x-intercepts are the same as roots or zeros. That's the x-intercept is the value of x when y is 0. So basically, this is our equation. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. Since x, there's only one x in this problem, we can just get x by itself. So I'm gonna take the equation, and I'm gonna move negative 4x squared to the left side of the equation. So I'm gonna move it over here, and it becomes positive 4x squared equals 64. Then I'm ready to solve for x. Now remember, we're doing PEMDAS backwards when we're solving. So there's no adding or subtracting attached to x, but there is multiply. So we're done with that, but we got to multiply or divide next. So we're going to divide by 4, divide by 4. That leaves me with x squared equals 16. And then we get rid of the square by doing the square root. So x equals, the square root and squares cancel. Square root of 16 is plus or minus 4. Now you're going to notice the answers are as as actual points. So your x-intercept would be at 4, 0 and at negative 4, 0. That's the two values of x that make y equal 0. Remember, this is x, this is y. And that's that answer. For those of you who'd like to factor, you could have factored out the greatest common factor on the left and factored out a negative 4 to begin with. And that would have left you with x squared minus 16. And then that is the difference of two squares. And when you have the difference of two squares, one is positive, one's negative. The square root of 16 is 4 and 4. So your answers are x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 4. This negative 4 will never equal 0, so it's irrelevant. Okay, last page. We got 3 more questions. I to the 236. There's a couple of ways you can do this. I'm going to show you the calculator way first. So if I bring up the calculator, hold up just a second. That did not happen the way I wanted it to. There we go. Keeps dragging it back. Glad you are getting to watch all this. All right, so I want to type in I, so second decimal point, to the 236 power. Now, when I type that in, I get, oh man, it's going to do that to me. I get 1 plus 3.6 e to the negative 12i. 1 plus 3.6 to e to the negative 12 times I. Let me double check that one more time. 1 plus 3.6 e to the negative 12. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I don't need the calculator anymore. Now, what we've talked about in class is this is scientific notation. What this really means is 1 plus 3.6 times 10 to the negative 12th power times I. And this number right here is basically 0 because it's a decimal point. I'm going to put it down here. It's a decimal point with 12 zeros, no, with 11 zeros. That's what that number is, because you would take the decimal from here and move it back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 places. So if I told you had 0.000, all those zeros, 36 in your banking account, you got nothing. All right? So nothing is 0. So really what we have is 1 plus 0i. 0i is nothing, so the answer is 1. Now, another way you can do that is to divide 236 by 4, because in class we learned that the i's repeat themselves every 4 times. So, if I bring the calculator back up, and I take 236 and I divide by 4, I don't care about the quotient as much as I do the remainder. There is no remainder. And so if there's no remainder, that would become I to the 0 power, because there's no remainder. And anything to the 0 power is 1. Question 24 is a problem from our last test on simplifying radicals. Remember, when you take in the 4th root of something, you're taking the 4th root of the big number, all right? And then the 4th root of x to the 12th, you're really going to divide 12 by 4. And the 4th root of y to the 24th, you're going to divide by 4. So the 4th root of 625, if you need to use your calculator, which you probably do, to get a 4th root, you're going to type in a 4, math, number 5, which is any root, and now you see 4th root of 256, and it gives you 4. So that's a perfect 4th root. Also, they're written on my board. Okay, so the 4th root of 625 is 4. The 4th root of x to the 12 is x to the 3rd, because 12 divided by 4. And the 4th root of y to the 24th is y to the 6th. So our answer, did I type in the wrong number? I'm sorry, I said 4 when it really was 5. My bad. Hopefully you're seeing this. The 4th root of 625 is 5. All right. And so we get 5x cubed y to the 6th. Hopefully, if you did the fourth root, you would know it's not 25 or 25. And then you just have to remember your rules of exponents. You're definitely not going to add 4 to the exponent here. And then what even happened there? I don't even know where they would have got that as a choice. Okay, last problem. What is the product of the radical expression? This was also from our last test. What you're going to need to do is distribute twice or FOIL. First times first, outer times outer, inner times inner, last times last. So 8 times 2 is going to be 16. 8 times radical 7 is positive 8 radical 7. Inner times inner is negative radical 7 times 2. That's negative 2 radical 7. And last times last, a negative times a positive is a negative. Square root of 7 times square root of 7 is 7. So now you're going to combine like terms. These are like terms, but 16 minus 7 are also like terms, so that's going to give you 9. 8 radical 7 minus 2 radical 7 is positive 6 radical 7. And so the answer is A. There you go. All right. Go back and look over these videos. If you have questions, make sure you study before the test on Thursday for B Day and the test on Friday for A Day. Y'all have a good night.